Chappaqua, where Hillary Clinton lives, in the racist neighborhood. Hillary Clinton, of all the places to live, picks the racist neighborhood the federal government made an example of as a racist neighborhood. It's not. But they just, why doesn't she move? Why does she support this? If you didn't catch Life, Liberty, and Levin last night, then go to whatever it is, Fox Nation or TiVo, DVR, whatever it may be. You need to watch it. I think there's a replay next week. Levin's show last night was incredible. They had Stanley Kurtz on, who has been talking about one of the biggest domestic policy scandals in a generation that the media, again, is not covering at all, but we've covered on this show for upwards of 3 years now. How the Democrats are literally going to war with the suburbs. I'm not kidding. It's happened. Look at the case of Westchester County, where they sued them, the federal government, and in 2009 forced Westchester County to build a bunch of low-income housing in high-end suburbs because they felt like it. Because, racism and all. They made all that up. It's actually happening. Trump has stopped it. It's called AFFH. Tattoo it on your skull. Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing. It is a big government, far left, radical agenda to destroy the suburbs. Destroy the suburbs because liberals hate the suburbs because it pulls tax money away from the big cities they want to dominate. They hate the suburbs. That's your house. So the liberals watching, the great Stanley Kurtz, who's been all over this story for years, if not decades now, was on Life, Liberty, and Levin, and for an hour broke down how the Democrats and Joe Biden are about to burn your neighborhood to the ground with these programs. Here's clip number one. It's a 2-minute clip. This is 1 minute of the 2 minutes. And this is Kurtz explaining how Joe Biden's about to bring back this program that's going to take over your schools, your policing, put public transportation in neighborhoods that aren't built for it, and they're going to claim you're a racist if you don't meet racial quotas in your neighborhood and build low-income housing smack dab in the middle of your neighborhood. And if you dare speak out, you're definitely a racist. Check out this clip.
That brief mention and created out of it a transformative rule, a little bit like Obamacare in that it's a massive rule that does a great many things, and you have to keep delving and delving. And the bottom line is that AFFH, the acronym for Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing, would radically undercut the political and economic independence of America's suburbs. It would allow bureaucrats in Washington, in the Department of Housing and Urban Development, to control zoning laws, to control the placement of transportation and business districts, even to some degree the drawing of school districts. In other words, almost every important local governmental responsibility could, under AFFH, fall into the de facto control of the feds.
Folks, you think he's making this up? You think this is hyperbolic? Look up Westchester 2009 consent decree, where as a test case, liberals sued Westchester County, New York, saying they weren't affirmatively furthering fair housing and alleging basically that the citizens of Westchester were racist. You don't have enough minorities in these neighborhoods. Keep in mind, Westchester, I think, is the 4th most diverse county in the country. I think Stanley Kurtz said that last night. Doesn't matter. It is, thankfully, now and has been for decades, illegal to discriminate based on race, gender, anything, selling someone your house. You can't do, it's illegal. So no one had a specific case of racism. They just said, we don't like the racial makeup of your town. There's basically too many white people. So we're going to sue you. You may say, oh, that probably got thrown out. No, it didn't. It scared the hell out of Westchester to the point where they agreed to build tens of millions of dollars of low-income housing smack in the middle of upper middle-class neighborhoods. It's not coming to my neighborhood, AFFH. It already has. Well, what stopped it? Why hasn't it expanded throughout the country? Well, there were lawsuits, thankfully, that stopped some of it, but the Trump administration just put a big stop to it and said, we're not doing that. It's illegal to discriminate based on race, thankfully. It will continue to be forever in a sane country. But unless you can prove someone was racially discriminated against, you pointing out the racial makeup of a neighborhood has nothing to do with anything. People move to neighborhoods for all kinds of reasons. Cuban family moves in. They bring in some Cuban friends who live next door. You have neighborhoods that have a lot of folks who are Cuban. Well, why they chose that neighborhood, we have no idea. Unless you can allege racial discrimination, you saying a neighborhood is racist is kind of offensive, no? So they're going to use this now to sue you and rezone your communities and plan a bunch of low-income housing right in the middle of your neighborhood. It's already happened. They're also going to redistrict your schools. But by the way, I'm all for school choice. So I'm just telling you what's going to happen. But if you're not, which you should be, by the way, but if you're not for school choice, no, my kids, I paid a lot of money to get in my neighborhood because the schools are good. That's fine. You're perfectly entitled to your opinion. That's not what the federal government's saying. They're saying, no, we're going to come in and we're going to redistrict your kids to different schools. Oh, you didn't know that? Oh, you think this is a big joke? Biden's running on this. Biden is running on reinstituting this. Even worse, they're doubling down. Watch cut 2 here. If they can't redistrict your schools, take away assets from your police department, and tax you to pay for big cities, they're going to institute regional governing consortiums to take away your tax money from your local neighborhoods, the suburbs are going to destroy and give them to the cities? Check this out. You think I'm messing with you?
So effectively, in so many crucial respects to the people who live in these communities or the people who want to live in these communities, the federal government would nationalize, federalize decisions respecting the economy, schooling, law enforcement, housing, zoning, commercial activity, transportation hubs. Have I missed something?
You probably have, Mark. I've probably missed something because there are so many things in the AFFH regulation. It's hard to keep track. For example, I'll give you just one example of something we both missed, quote unquote. The AFFH will allow the feds to push local governments into regional governing consortia. Now, what does that bit of gobbledygook actually mean? It means that it will try to create a layer of government in between the federal government and local government, a layer of government that corresponds to your greater metropolitan area. So if you are in, say, Montgomery County outside of Philadelphia, it will try to remove your governing responsibilities and hand them over to the greater Philadelphia metropolitan area, which will probably end up taking a chunk of your tax money. So there's a lot in AFFH.
So just to be clear, let's sum up what's in AFFH, which Biden has already openly pledged to expand. It's not a secret. Look it up yourself. I don't like Trumpist tweets. Good. You live in the suburbs? Here's what's coming your way. Low-income housing, massive housing complexes, big high-rises of low-income housing in your neighborhood, redistricting your schools. You like your schools? No more. They ain't your schools anymore. Your tax money is not going to be spent locally. It's going to be spent in cities you don't even live in that you just moved out of. And it's all going to be done under the guise of you're all racist, despite the fact they can't actually point to any racism. And one of the neighborhoods used as an example of neighborhood racism, again, not specific examples, they don't have any. One of the neighborhoods, Joe, here's the greatest irony of all, folks, and we'll be done after this because it's a mic drop moment. One of the neighborhoods in Westchester uses an example of a racist neighborhood that needs low-income housing built in it, and its schools redistricted is Chappaqua, where Hillary Clinton lives, in the racist neighborhood. Hillary Clinton, of all the places to live, picks the racist neighborhood the federal government made an example of as a racist neighborhood. It's not, but they just, why doesn't she move? Why does she support this?
You just heard Dan Bongino.